Hey guys, welcome back to releasethecraftin. We're on day 2 of the Goblin mode challenge. I have a playlist down below if you guys are just jumping in and just joining for the first day. That has the first day and then the announcement, so you can get all the information and figure out what's going on here. But we're just going to jump into it. We are doing goblin-y crafts for Goblin mode, and today's prompt is slime and snails. So of course I had to add an allusion to something from Labyrinth because it's my favorite movie, but also how could I not? It's literally a story about goblins and the Goblin King and all that, so I had to do a little quote from Magic Dance, of course. But for this, we're gonna break all the rules. Every rule I've ever told you about embossing, we're not gonna do that anymore. We're gonna break those rules today. So what I've done is got a piece of vellum, and we're gonna make some slimy goblin paper. Okay, so it's gonna feel slimy when we're done with it, but it's gonna be goblin-y, so it's gonna be grungy, but also a little bit sparkly because goblins love treasure. But what I've done is ink it up with an oxide ink, and then add in Lost Shadow embossing powder, and then I'm coming over the top with Scorched Timber. I think it's Scorched Timber or it's Vintage Photo. I don't remember. Sorry, this is so bad. Re-inker, and then I'm going to add water to that so that the re-inker moves around. And already I know that you guys are like, what is this chaos? But then, as I'm heating this up, I'm going to come back through with some embossing enamel, and it doesn't particularly have to be embossing enamel if you don't have this. You can just use regular embossing powder in gold and silver, but I like the embossing enamel because it's chunkier and stuff like that. But as I'm heating it up, I'm going to sprinkle it in here and there, and then because I am not just heating up the embossing powder to set it, I'm overheating it so that all those powders start moving around and getting really close to the page. And then also the water that is applied to the page is going to help these embossing powders move around and sort of mix together and add some really interesting effects. And what I'm looking for is a very fluid effect. I want those embossing enamels to sort of spread and look a little bit like watercolory on here. And sorry, my focus is going to be all over the place as I do this because I got it really close, which sometimes is going to have to be vertical to the page in order to get the effect that I'm going for. But you can see here I'm spreading it around, adding it in, and then sort of letting it wash out like it's a watercolor. So we're kind of effectively painting with embossing powder and heat. And I'm going to tell you guys right off the top, this is a very, very messy project because I used the Distress Oxide as the sticky part for the embossing powder. It's not as tacky as Versamark ink would be. So a lot of that embossing powder you put on the page is going to fly off, which is kind of the desired effect, to be honest, because I don't want every single surface of this paper to be covered in this embossing powder, in the Lost Shadow embossing powder. And I guess if you don't have the Lost Shadow, it's like the embossing glaze, or whatever they call them, the ones that are see-through. Or just distress embossing glaze. If you don't have those, you could just use a clear embossing powder. Lost Shadow is a little bit gray of a color, it's almost white, but mostly gray. Color, it's a cool gray color, so if you have a cool gray, you could also use that as well. I chose this one because it's translucent, so you can see through it, but a white or a clear embossing powder would also get the effect across. White's going to be opaque, of course, but it'll pick up a lot of the color from that Distress re-inker, and you'll get some interesting effects that way. But as you can see, we have this very delightfully grungy looking thing. I'm going to go back over after I've gotten all this pooling watery effects that I'm going for, to make sure that I've heated up all the embossing powder that remains, so it's not gritty and gross and falling off as we use this paper. But you can see where all the embossing powder is, because it's all mixed together. It's got that shiny, slimy look to it, but it also feels that way. I don't know how to describe it to you guys. It feels cool and it feels slick, like it is covered in slime. So goblin paper has been made. What am I doing now? I don't remember. I shot all these videos in the same weekend, and then I'm coming back to do the voiceover, so bear with me as I try to recall what the heck I was doing. Oh, we're making tags. That's what we're doing. We're making the tag base that we're going to use this paper on. Because I decided to turn this paper into a layered tag. I was going to make like envelopes, which I think I ended up making one envelope with this paper as I was playing around, but I decided for this challenge in particular, since it was ephemera based and I don't really have that many tags in my like bag of things for the Goblin Cottage journal that I'm working on, we're going to make some cool tags with some snail boys. And these are actually the snails from the Autumn Academia kit that I have. I blew them up and then cut them out so that I could use them on me. So I'm just backing a little bit of that file folder that I was using for this project with some paper, and then we're going to cut them down to size, and we're going to come up with some cool little tags to go with our slimy gross paper. But we can't just stop at like slimy gross paper. It also has to be continuously slimy and gross. So after I cut the vellum down to the size that I need, which is a little bit painful because there's so much cool texture and embossing powder and stuff on here that like cutting it away was a little bit hurtful, but it's okay. I made more than one sheet, so I have more to come back to. Oh, here's where I realized I somehow still managed to cut these two different sizes, even though I'm pretty sure I told myself the right measurements as I cut it. But we're going to turn these into tags really quick. And it's not that quick now that I'm watching it. I wish it could be quicker. And then we're going to ink them up and get them ready. And then it's basically just trying to map out where I'm going to place everything, and then you're going to see what I do to add another layer of slime to our slime and snails. And it's just really fun. This challenge is really fun, you guys. I didn't think I was going to enjoy it that much. Like, I knew I was going to like it because, of course, I've been already dabbling in the Goblin sphere to begin with because I'm working on that journal. But, like, I just did not anticipate how much fun I would have doing this little tiny micro challenge and putting all this stuff together and trying to think of ways to hit these prompts. Because I wrote the prompts first and then came back and made the ephemera, which, like, if I was nicer to myself, I would have just made the ephemera and then been like, this was the prompt all along. But I didn't do that, so I had to come back and, like, puzzle out what I was going to do for each of these, and every time I did it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so fun. So now we have the tags, like, inked up. We're just going to back them so that, you know, they can be written on, and the back is cute because the back of that file folder was not cute. And then I think I'm going to stitch around them. I don't remember. We'll find out together. I hope, though, that you guys are crafting along or just following along. Oh, we did stitch around them. Look at that. And having fun with this and trying it out. Here I have some handmade paper I picked up at the, like, art reuse. This was, like, somebody's student project that they just ended up donating when they no longer needed it. And it's really great paper, really great texture. It works really well for this theme. But I'm going to use that as, like, my photo mat writing space, whatever you want to call it. But we're going to grunge it up, of course, because it has to match the vibes. And look at how great our little snaily boys look. They're so big. I think they're probably a little bit bigger than they needed to be for this, but, like, I don't see the downside in that. They look perfect to me. And we're just going to get those little backing pieces down, and I promise we're going to get to the meat and potatoes of this. It's going to look so cool in just a second. But essentially, what I had to figure out, or what I wanted to figure out, was, you know, how to make a little snaily, like, tag. But also, to make it extra snaily, it also has to be a little bit slimy, right? Because snails have slime. As adorable as they are, I know that I might not be in the majority on that opinion. I do think snails are really cute. But it has to be a little bit slimy. So I'm going to return to the embossing powder and pick up that lost shadow, because it is, like, that off gray sort of color, so it does have a little bit of pigment but not a lot of pigment to it, so it'll look pretty good. And I'm just going to use a paintbrush to paint out a snail trail so that we can emboss it. And I'm going to add a couple of little drippies. We'll make it look a little goopy, because I feel like, you know, in addition to having slimy paper, things that goblins touch would just be slimy in general, and because they're friends with snails and gross, creepy, crawly things, you know, there's probably a little extra snail slime on stuff. That's my my logic, my reasoning here. Also, I just think it's fun to make things look a little bit slimy, and I was having a lot of fun putting this together. And I don't have that much to talk about for this video. I probably could have edited this down better, but no, I don't do that. So here we are together, just watching the process and observing. I really have to figure out how focus works on my camera, because this happens all the time. And can I say, I just got that like jar of Lost Shadow embossing glaze, and I have already used like half of it, which is crazy to me because I have embossing powders that I've kept for years, but for some reason I was like, this particular embossing enamel, I'm going to use all of it immediately, all at once. But look at that, look how great that looks. I think because it's got a little bit of the gray pigment in it, it really stands out really well, so you can see that there's slime like with your eyeballs. You don't have to like be surprised, but it doesn't like overshadow anything or like draw too much attention, but it looks great. It looks like we have slimy you know, snail trails on everything, which is exactly the effect I was going for, which is the craziest thing I think I've said all week. I'm not gonna say of all time because I've definitely said crazier things, but this week so far, yeah, I want my journal to look like a snail's been crawling all over it, and that's the weirdest thing I've said so far. But look how great that looks. It does look like these little guys have been crawling around on top of that. And don't worry, I will definitely, I think, maybe, question mark? I don't know if I do. I'm gonna walk that back because I don't remember what I did. I was gonna say I'm gonna show you guys the close-ups and you can see like all the final details, but I don't think I did that for this one. I think I just went with, you know, you live and you learn, and watch it as we go. So we'll find out together when we get there, because God forbid I watch a video back before I do a voiceover. But then I decided I needed to attach the top tag to the bottom tag, and I'm going to do that by using an eyelet, and we're going to add some trim to it, and then just, you know, polish it up a little bit so it looks like a very intentional, very completed project. And I will say that after this video was over, I did go put these tags underneath a book to get that paper to lay flat. So now they look really nice and flat. And when you see the final project, you'll see how nice they look once they get a chance to settle. So you can absolutely press these pages flat without any sort of like issues. They don't stick to each other or anything like that, because that embossing powder is just plastic. It just has to be like trained to lay nicely after you like battered it. But what happens is, because we're dropping water onto vellum, the vellum gets all crinkly, so it just has to be sort of smoothed back out. And then I decided that as much as I love the slimy effect of the page, it needed just a little bit extra, so I decided to pop out these word sheets and just add a couple word snippets to like the front of this, so that you get like a vibe going into it. And fun fact, this word sheet, this forest word sheet is like one of my most popular word sheets. It's this one, and then the other forest word sheet are the most popular ones. This is the Great Outdoors, and then I have the one that has like forest words. And yeah, it's the most popular word sheet in my shop. That's a little bit of a fun fact for you guys. It's the one I did not expect to be the most popular, and yet therefore it is. So I grabbed some of these, what are they called, fabric samples, that I have, you know, cut up quite a bit of, and I'm just gonna like ratty them up a bit so that they match the vibe, so they're grungy and they look like goblins have definitely touched them. And I'm gonna back the words onto that so that they have a little bit of extra texture, because this tag is nothing if not a bunch of texture on texture. So you have slimy texture, you have fabric texture, you have paper textures, and I love how this came out. I just think it's really cool and just a really fun thing. And like, I love the like watercolory pooling effects of those embossing powders, and the only way to achieve that is by overheating and piling on embossing powder on top of embossing powder, and adding water, which is wild. I know that you can use water to emboss, but you know, it's not as reliable as using Versamark ink. But yeah, it works clearly, and it also added a really great like watery effect to our tags and stuff here, so they came out really great, and I love how this looks. And I think like the layered effect also is doing a little bit for me here, And I'm just going to use some of these great trims that I have. I've been sitting on these forever, so they're getting used up now, which is also delightful. But yeah, this just came together great. I hope that you guys try this out if you haven't tried it already, or if you've done anything like this. But yeah, let me know if you make some goblin paper, if you make some slimy tags. I would definitely be interested. And then come back tomorrow and see what we make for RTC Goblin Mode Part 2. Until next time, guys, happy crafting. I appreciate your faces. Bye.